Every eye was on me. The council chamber had gone quiet, the dangerous kind. Then a hand closed around my throat. Gasps rippled through the room. I froze as the Alpha King stepped in behind me, his chest hard against my back, his grip firm enough for them to see, gentle enough for only me to feel. His mouth brushed my ear.
Act like you're mine.
My heart slammed. If they believed him, I would live. And if they didn't, his fingers tightened, and no one in that chamber dared to speak. Chapter 1. I stood hand in hand with the Alpha King, still reeling from what he had whispered in my ear. His grip never loosened as he stared down the council, daring any of them to challenge him. No one spoke. Then he turned and, without a word, led me out of the chamber. The doors closed behind us, heavy stone swallowing the council's murmurs, but my pulse didn't slow. His hand remained wrapped around mine, firm, claiming, as we moved through the hall. Every step echoed too loudly against the floor, each one a reminder that I was still being watched. Guards lined the walls. Their eyes followed us. Some curious, some wary. None intervened. I didn't say a word, afraid that if I did, he might change his mind and hand me back to them. What I was being accused of was grave enough that, standing before the council, I had been fully prepared to die. I had seen it in their faces, the certainty, the way my fate felt like a formality they were eager to conclude. Then he had appeared, out of nowhere. A shadow cutting through the chamber, a presence so heavy it silenced the room before he ever spoke. And when his hand closed around my throat, when his breath brushed my ear and he whispered those words, the entire world had shifted.
Act like you're mine.
I hadn't known whether to breathe or freeze. I still didn't. We reached a crossway in the corridor, and suddenly he stopped. My heart stuttered. This was it. This was where he let go. If his hand slipped from mine now, I wouldn't make it 3 steps before the guards moved. I could feel it, the way the air tightened, the way the shadows seemed to lean closer. The council might be behind closed doors, but their authority wasn't. His grip tightened slightly. Not painful, deliberate. When we reached a corner of the hall, far enough that the guards were out of sight, he released my hand. Then he spoke.
Do not for a second think you are safe.
He lifted my chin, forcing my gaze up to his.
I kept you alive for a reason, little flame.
And then he turned and walked away. I stood there, heart hammering, the echo of his words burning through me. Little Flame. Only one thing had ever earned me that name, which meant he knew what I was accused of. The memory hit me without warning. Firelight. A courtyard. A voice I trusted saying my name like it meant nothing at all. Heat rushed through me, too fast, too violent, burning beneath my skin as the torch slipped from my hand. Screams followed, and then, nothing. I was still trying to understand that when footsteps hurried toward me. 2 maids appeared from the adjoining corridor. I recognized them. Palace servants, not guards. One of them dipped into a hurried bow.
His Majesty has instructed us to escort you to your rooms.
Rooms. I stared at her. My rooms? She smiled as if this were the most natural thing in the world.
Of course.
They didn't give me time to argue. They guided me down the hall, past passages I had never been permitted to walk. The stone beneath my feet grew smoother, the torches brighter, familiar in a way that made my stomach sink. The East Wing, the Alpha's wing. I slowed, dread curling tight in my chest. I had stood before the council for a reason. I had done what they accused me of. So why had he saved me, and why, of all places, had he put me here? I was jolted from my thoughts when the maids finally pushed open a door. What I saw made me gasp. The room beyond was unlike anything I had ever imagined. A vast bed dominated the center, draped in dark fabric and crowned with a carved canopy that reached toward the ceiling. Sheer curtains hung from its edges, pale and whisper-thin, stirring faintly in the warm air. The floors were polished stone inlaid with gold veining, soft rugs layered beneath bare feet. Tall windows lined one wall, their curtains drawn back just enough to let the last light of day spill across the room in amber streaks. This was not a guest chamber. This was a chamber of power. I turned slowly, disoriented, my gaze catching on a heavy table set with crystal decanters, a fireplace already laid with fresh wood, and a wardrobe carved with sigils I didn't recognize. Every detail felt deliberate, claimed. I looked back at the maids, my pulse roaring in my ears. "You must be mistaken," I said. "This can't be my room." One of them blinked, genuinely surprised.
Of course it is.
I shook my head and took a step back toward the open door, panic tightening in my chest. "No, there's been some error. I don't belong."
This is the room the Alpha King instructed us to prepare.
The first maid said quietly. I froze.
For his guest,
She added. I turned fully then, dread crawling up my spine. "I'm not his guest." Her expression tightened, just slightly.
he would punish us severely if you do not comply.
The second maid spoke before I could respond.
We were also instructed to clean you and see that you are properly prepared.
Prepared. For what? I asked, my voice barely steady. They didn't answer. Instead, they guided me deeper into the chamber, through an archway I hadn't noticed before. Beyond it lay a bathing room carved from pale stone, steam already curling from a sunken tub filled with clear water. The scent there was stronger, soap and herbs, and something soothing that made my muscles ache with sudden exhaustion. I didn't resist when they helped me undress. I barely had the strength. They washed me carefully, thoroughly, as if removing more than dirt. My skin warmed under their hands as I sank into the bath, the water lapping gently at my shoulders. For a moment, just one, I let myself breathe. The scent of the soap clung to me, grounding, almost unreal. When they were satisfied, they dried me swiftly and began to dress me, layer after layer, fabric softer than anything I had ever touched. They fastened clasps, smoothed seams, adjusted the fall of the cloth with practiced precision. Rouge warmed my cheeks. Jewelry followed, delicate chains at my throat, weight settling against my collarbone, cool metal brushing my skin. By the time they were finished, I scarcely recognized the girl staring back at me from the mirror. The dress was a deep, rich green, the color of forest shadow and flame-touched leaves. It clung where it should and flowed where it was meant to, moving with me like it had been sewn for my body alone. My hair had been curled and pinned, framing my face in soft waves. My eyes looked brighter, sharper. To think that days ago I had been a maid of the lowest rank, forbidden even to step into the East Wing. Hours ago, I had stood before the council, prepared to die for the fire I had caused. And now...
You look beautiful,
one of the maids said softly. I didn't answer. Because as I stared at my reflection, standing in the Alpha King's wing, dressed as something I had never been allowed to be, only one thought burned through me, hotter than any flame I had ever summoned. If this was mercy, I feared what he intended next. Chapter 2. The maids left soon after, informing me that I would be summoned for dinner once I had rested. Someone, they assured me, would escort me. The door closed softly behind them. I stood there for a long moment, alone in the vast silence of the chamber, before finally sinking onto the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped beneath my weight, impossibly soft, swallowing me whole. It felt wrong to rest here, wrong to exist in a place like this at all. I lay back and stared up at the canopy above me, my thoughts spiraling. How had I ended up here? I didn't even know how the flames had erupted. only that by the time I understood what was happening, the courtyard was already burning, and I was standing at its center. That day, I had been heading toward the kitchens to fetch clean linens for the evening meal. The corridors had been poorly lit, the torches along the walls burned low, so I had taken a small oil-soaked wick with me, its flame steady in my hand to light the way. The kitchens lay beyond the open courtyard. As I crossed the stone threshold, I heard voices, soft at first, intimate. I slowed, instinct prickling, and stepped into the shadow of a column. 2 figures stood near the fountain at the center of the courtyard. A man in uniform, dark, finely tailored, unmistakably military. I couldn't see his face clearly at first, only the broad line of his shoulders, the way he stood with quiet confidence. The woman facing him, however, I recognized instantly. The Alpha King's sister. They were close. Too close. Her hands rested on his chest, his head dipped toward hers. They were kissing, unashamed, unhidden. I turned to leave. Then I heard her speak. "I truly don't know what you see in her," she said, her voice sharp with disdain. "You're a general in the king's army, and she's nothing but a lowly maid." I froze. There was only one general. My breath caught painfully in my chest. No, that couldn't be right. Perhaps there was another. Perhaps I was mistaken. Perhaps the shadows were playing tricks on me. Then the man laughed softly.
"You know I'm only with her because she's my mate,"
he said.
"but she's not worthy of me."
The words struck like a blade.
"She's a maid. She has no power. Sometimes I wonder if the moon goddess was in her right mind when she bound us together."
The world tilted. He shifted, stepping into the light. And I saw his face. Taryn. My mate. The only person I had ever trusted. My heart slammed violently against my ribs, my face burning with shame and disbelief. Maybe he was only saying these things to earn favor with her, to impress her. Maybe he didn't mean...
"I've never loved her,"
he continued easily.
"and I never will."
Something inside me shattered. I don't remember gasping, but the torch slipped from my fingers, clattering against the stone. The flame flared as it struck the ground. At the same moment, heat surged through my body, violent, uncontrollable, rushing through my veins and into my bones. It burned beneath my skin, hotter than anything I had ever felt. The oil-soaked wick fell from my hand. It landed against the fallen torch, and the fire exploded. Flames raced across the courtyard stones, licking up the banners, climbing the walls with terrifying speed. Someone screamed, then another. The heat roared, alive and furious, feeding on itself. I stumbled backward, staring in horror as everything burned. The courtyard, the banners, the night. And at the center of it all, me. For a moment, I stared at the carnage I had caused in a moment of shock and carelessness. I couldn't understand how a fallen torch and an oil-soaked wick could have spread the fire so far, so fast. Then the smoke reached my lungs, and everything went black. I woke in the dungeons. My throat burned as I coughed, my head pounding, my body aching and exhausted. The air was damp and stale, the stone beneath me cold. Chains rattled somewhere nearby. I didn't know how long I had been there. Days passed. Then I was dragged before the council. They said I had committed arson, that I had endangered lives, especially that of the Alpha King's sister, Princess Aliera. I pleaded my case. I told them I had dropped the torch and the oil wick in shock after witnessing my mate with another woman. I didn't tell them that the other woman had been Princess Aliera. They wouldn't have believed me. I was sure they assumed she had simply been passing through the courtyard, taking a harmless stroll. I believed they would pardon me, call it an accident, especially since no one died in the fire. Until Taryn arrived. Even after everything, I thought he was there to admit his mistake, to tell them the truth, to save me. Oh, how wrong I was. He stood before the council and told them I was jealous, unstable. That although we were fated mates, he had told me repeatedly that he did not want me. That the only reason he hadn't rejected the bond was out of pity, because he feared I would do something insane if he did. I stood there in shock, barely able to breathe. I had known he didn't love me. I hadn't known he hated me enough to lie like this. The council believed him. I couldn't blame them. Taryn was convincing. After all, he had convinced me he loved me for years. Who would they believe? A lowly maid, or the general of the king's army? After his lies, he left the chamber without sparing me a glance. The council was ready to sentence me to death. Until the Alpha King arrived. Until he claimed me. Of course, they no longer believed I had acted out of jealousy. Because now, according to them, I belonged to him. But the question still clawed at my mind. Why would he save me if he believed I had willingly hurt his sister? And even if he believed it had been an accident, what brother would allow someone who endangered his sister to go unpunished? Should I stop here or add, unless death was too kind? Chapter 3. I was still turning over the question of why the Alpha King had spared me when a knock sounded at the door. I jolted upright and slid from the bed, my heart stuttering as I crossed the room. When I opened the door, a messenger stood waiting, posture stiff, gaze lowered.
Dinner,
He said simply, stepping aside and gesturing for me to follow. Right. The maids had mentioned that. I fell into step behind him as he led me out of my chamber and into the east wing proper. The corridor widened the farther we walked, its stone floors polished smooth beneath my feet. Torches burned bright along the walls, illuminating a long gallery of portraits. I slowed without meaning to. Alpha Kings and Lunas stared down from gilded frames, regal, composed, powerful. Even in paint, authority clung to them. It pressed in around me, a reminder of just how far out of place I was. My steps faltered when I reached the most recent portrait. The last Luna, the Alpha King's mother. She had been kind, kinder than anyone of her station had reason to be. She used to visit the kitchens, speak to the maids as if we were people instead of furniture. She had once smiled at me and asked my name. Beside her hung another portrait. Her other son, the Alpha King's brother. Unlike his mother, he had been cruel, especially to women. And if you were a maid, you were less than nothing to him. I couldn't say I mourned his death. He and the Queen had been killed during an attack by the Ice Wolf. No one knew who the Ice Wolf was, or why he had struck, but everyone remembered that disastrous day. I forced the memory aside, my chest tightening with old grief for the Luna who had deserved better. The messenger stopped before a pair of towering doors and pushed them open. The dining chamber beyond was breathtaking. A long table stretched across the room, laden with more food than the entire staff would see in a day. Gold and crystal caught the firelight, casting warm reflections across stone walls carved with sigils of the realm. And at the head of the table, he sat there, the Alpha King, his cloak draped loosely over his shoulders, muscles visible beneath, posture relaxed but alert. His gaze lifted the moment I stepped inside. I froze. For a heartbeat, I forgot how to breathe.
Are you going to sit?
He drawled.
Or continue staring, little flame?
Heat crept up my neck. I moved quickly to a chair several places down the table and reached for it. The scrape of his chair against stone stopped me cold. He was on his feet in an instant. A low sound rumbled in his chest as he crossed the distance between us. Suddenly, I was lifted from the floor, a startled gasp leaving me as he pulled me effortlessly against him. I struggled on instinct, but he didn't falter. Instead, he sat and settled me onto his lap, one arm firm around my waist, anchoring me there.
You're supposed to be mine,
He murmured near my ear.
remember? So act like it.
I went still, breath shallow, every nerve alight. When I didn't respond, his grip tightened, not painful, but unmistakably possessive.
They're watching.
He said quietly.
Now is not the time to be afraid.
I glanced around the chamber, confusion flickering through me. All I saw were 2 guards standing motionless near the wall. As if sensing my thoughts, he spoke again.
Spies.
He said calmly.
The councils.
My pulse jumped.
They'll report everything they see tonight.
He continued, reaching for a goblet as if we were an ordinary couple sharing a meal.
That's why you're here. They need to believe you didn't set the fire out of jealousy.
My head snapped toward him. You believe me? He scoffed softly.
Don't mistake strategy for sympathy.
He said.
I'm not helping you.
My chest tightened.
This serves my interests.
He went on, eyes flicking briefly toward the guards.
What those interests are is not information you're entitled to. Not yet.
I swallowed. Then why, Your Majesty?
Stop calling me that.
He cut in.
You're my supposed lover, not my subject. Call me by my name.
Adian, I said softly. Adian, I corrected, my voice unsteady. His mouth curved slightly.
Good.
He turned his attention back to the table, his arm still firm around me.
Now,
he murmured.
Smile, eat, and act like you're enjoying my company.
I nodded, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. His hard muscles were pressed against my back as he fed me, his presence overwhelming in a way I wasn't prepared for. I could feel his irritation building at my inability to pretend, a subtle tension in the arm wrapped around my waist. But I didn't know how to act flirtatious, not with him. He was intimidating, and aside from Taryn, I had never been this close to a man before. I didn't know what to do with myself. A low sound rumbled in his chest, a warning. I braced myself for a scolding. Before he could speak, a familiar voice cut through the air. Brother, is there a reason why? The words died abruptly. Princess Aliera stopped short when she saw me. Shock flashed across her features before hardening into annoyance. She flipped her long black hair back over her shoulder, red lips pursed, the contrast striking against her pale skin. She was dressed in black silk threaded with intricate detailing, adorned in jewels, every inch of her carefully composed. Before she could speak, Adian did.
It's about time you arrived, Aliera,
he said coolly.
Sit.
Her eyes lingered on me, sharp and assessing, before she moved to take her seat. That was when he entered. Taryn. My heart began to pound, a familiar ache tightening my chest. I wasn't ready to see him, not here, not like this. What was he doing here? He bowed.
Your Majesty.
He froze mid-motion when his gaze landed on me sitting on Adian's lap. Anger twisted his features, heat rushed to my face, and I instinctively tried to stand, but Adian's arm tightened, pulling me closer instead. His grip was firm, unyielding, and to my own surprise, a part of me wanted to stay. Aliera was the first to speak. What is she doing here, brother? She demanded. You know she tried to kill me. Taryn took the seat beside her, jaw clenched.
She's unstable,
he added sharply.
You're making a mistake, Your Majesty.
Adian ignored him completely. After a moment of strained silence, maids appeared with more food for Taryn and Aliera, as if there wasn't already enough on the table. Taryn cut fruit for her, and she thanked him sweetly. He leaned in, whispered something, and she laughed, resting against him. His arm slid around her waist the way it used to slide around mine. He fed her, kissed her openly. The audacity of it, doing this in front of me, sent a surge of anger through my veins. I understood that he didn't love me, but I didn't understand why he hated me this much. The anger hardened into something sharper. I wanted him to feel it. The humiliation, the ache, the loss. Without fully thinking it through, I leaned back into Adian's chest, nuzzling my face lightly against his neck. He stiffened in surprise, glancing down at me. Just moments ago I had been trembling in his arms, unable to relax. Funny how seeing Taryn with another woman, pretending I didn't exist, was what finally broke something loose inside me. I laughed, light and unrestrained, as if Adian had said the most amusing thing in the world. He gave me a questioning look, then recovered, his expression shifting as he played along. From the corner of my eye, I checked. Taryn was watching, so I didn't stop. I let my fingers trail over Adian's bare chest, marveling at the solid heat beneath my palm. That part wasn't acting.
You'll have to be more convincing than that, little flame.
Adian murmured. He tilted his head toward mine, close enough that I could feel his breath against my lips. For a heartbeat, I thought he would close the distance himself. He didn't. He waited. Amber flickered faintly in his eyes as he watched me, giving me the choice. I didn't think. I leaned in and kissed him. It was brief but deliberate, warm and firm. He stilled for a fraction of a second before kissing me back, controlled pressure sending a shiver through me. His hand tightened at my waist, steady and grounding, while my fingers tangled briefly in his hair. The taste of him was intoxicating. I pulled away slowly, afraid that if I didn't, I wouldn't stop. He let me go, but not before brushing a lingering kiss against the corner of my mouth. We stared at each other, the room fading into nothing. Someone cleared their throat. Taryn. His face was dark with anger, jaw clenched tight. For a moment, I remembered why I'd done it, to hurt him. But his reaction barely registered. All I could think about was the way Adian had kissed me. Chapter 4. The rest of the dinner passed in strained silence, at least between them. Between Adian and me, it was anything but. I caught myself watching his mouth far too often, my attention drifting back to the memory of his kiss. He seemed to notice, his gaze lingering, his hand brushing my waist or my arm with deliberate ease, as if finding excuses to remind me where I sat. Across the table, Aliera and Taryn ate stiffly. The tension grew thick enough to choke on. Finally, Taryn pushed his chair back and stood. He didn't say a word. He only looked at me, once, sharply, before turning and leaving the chamber. Aliera followed moments later, her skirt sweeping behind her as she rose, her glare cutting just as deep. When the doors closed behind them, the air shifted. Adian leaned back slightly, his arms still resting loosely around me.
An excellent performance,
He said, his voice louder than necessary, but still low enough that the two council spies wouldn't catch the words.
Very convincing, little flame.
Heat crept into my cheeks. You as well, Your Majesty,
It's Adian.
he corrected easily. Then his expression changed. The teasing edge faded, replaced by something far more serious as he lowered his voice.
I wasn't acting at all, Scarlet.
My heart leapt. He never used my name, not once since he's met me, though a part of me suspected he had always known it. Before I could respond, he tilted my chin upward, a hint of a smile returning to his lips.
We should share one more kiss,
He said lightly.
just to make sure they believe we're truly lovers.
I laughed softly. He wasn't fooling me. He had enjoyed the kiss just as much as I had. This was simply an excuse. Instead of answering, I leaned forward and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. Then, before he could react, I slipped from his lap and backed away, grinning. He laughed, low and unguarded, calling after me, but I was already moving toward the waiting messenger. As we walked back through the halls, I brushed my fingers against my lips, still smiling. It was absurd, almost laughable, that the Alpha King could be so human. I was still smiling when the messenger stopped outside my door. The smile vanished instantly. Taryn stood there, waiting. I tried to step past him, pretend I hadn't seen him standing there, but Taryn called my name. Then his hand closed around my arm.
Why are you with the Alpha King?
He demanded, anger sharp in his voice.
Do you really think he cares for you? That he truly wants you?
A bitter laugh tore out of me. Oh, like you cared for me, I snapped. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. You cared for me while kissing another woman? I continued, my voice shaking. You cared for me while you stood before the council and told them I was unstable? You cared for me while they prepared to execute me? My chest burned as the words spilled out. I would have died because of your lies, Taryn. If that is what caring for me looks like, I don't want it. I turned to leave. He stopped me again.
Scarlet, wait. I know I lied.
He said quickly.
I know what I did. But do you not remember when I saved your life?
The words hit harder than I expected.
When the ice wolf attacked,
He went on.
you were trapped, crushed beneath the frozen ground. You were about to be frozen alive. I pulled you free.
The memory surged forward, unbidden. Ice spreading like living glass across the courtyard, screams cutting through the air, the ground freezing solid beneath us. I had been pinned beneath a jagged slab of ice the ice wolf had torn from the earth, unable to move, unable to breathe. There had been others trapped with me. That had been the same attack, the one that killed the Alpha King's brother and his mother. The palace had mourned for weeks afterward. Taryn had been a grunt then, one soldier among many, and he had dragged me free, dragged others free too. That single act had turned him into a hero, had taken him from an unnamed soldier to the general he was now.
Remember that, Scarlet.
He said, his voice softer.
I saved your life.
I turned back to face him slowly. You may have saved my life once, I said, my voice steady despite the ache tightening my chest. But that day in front of the council, I met his eyes. You took it, and this time someone else saved me. I didn't wait for him to answer. When I walked away this time, he didn't stop me. But what stopped me was movement in my peripheral vision. Two figures stepped into the corridor ahead, the guards from the dining chamber, the ones Adian had warned me about. For a heartbeat, I thought they were coming for me, but they walked straight past and stopped beside Taryn instead. He stiffened. Confusion flickered across his face before he straightened, slipping seamlessly into the commanding posture of a general.
Can I help you, troops?
He demanded. One of them spoke.
General Taryn Hollowood,
He said evenly.
you are to be brought before the council on charges of lying to the council.
The color drained from Taryn's face.
No,
He snapped.
you don't understand.
They didn't let him finish. They seized him, ignoring his shouted threats and commands as if they meant nothing. I stood frozen as they dragged him down the corridor, his voice echoing off the stone until it vanished completely. And in that moment, I understood. The spies had followed us. They had listened. They would take him before the council and repeat every word they had heard. I watched as Taryn shouted and struggled, his threats echoing down the corridor. But they didn't release him. They didn't even hesitate. As he was dragged away, a cold realization settled deep in my chest. Someone had led them here. They hadn't come by chance. And it couldn't have been Adian. If he had summoned them, then the spies, and the council, would know he was aware of them, which would make the performance at dinner pointless, meaningless. And I wasn't naive enough to think that just because Adian had enjoyed kissing me, he wasn't using me. He had been honest about that from the start, and strangely, I found comfort in it. There were no illusions between us, no lies dressed as affection, so it had to be someone else, someone working quietly, deliberately, which meant someone else had set this in motion. The question was, who? Chapter 5.
She performed beautifully. Every smile, every laugh, every calculated touch, and the kiss. Gods, the kiss. It wasn't timid. It wasn't accidental. She had chosen it, leaned into it, claimed it as much as I had. The heat of her lips lingered long after she pulled away, intoxicating enough that for a heartbeat I wanted to forget everything else and take her right there at the table. I wanted more, but I didn't. I couldn't afford to. Not when I was using her. Not when I had already crossed too many lines, simply by wanting her at all. So I settled for light touches. A hand at her waist, fingers brushing skin just enough to sell the lie. Enough to keep the council convinced. Enough to keep me from doing something irreversible. I had noticed Scarlet long before tonight. Years ago, in fact, after my mother told me about her. Scarlet carried fire. She just didn't know it. Elemental magic was rare among our kind. Rare enough that most believed it a myth, a story told to frighten children. In my lifetime, I had only ever known of two who possessed it, Scarlet and the Ice Wolf. The thought of him made my jaw tighten. He had wanted one thing only, my throne. The day my mother named me Crown Alpha, he lost control. Rage consumed him, and he transformed in the heart of the palace, ice tearing through stone and flesh alike. I fought him with everything I had. When I finally brought him down, blood spilling from his throat as he lay dying, he smiled. And with his last breath, he cursed us. A slow, creeping curse of frost. That would affect my mother, and several children. Frozen, not dead, but trapped in an endless sleep of ice. He had proclaimed that only a fire that burned bright and was rival to his ice that would be able to unfreeze them. The court believed they had perished in the attack. I let them believe it. The truth was far worse. They were alive. And before the ice claimed her completely, my mother had spoken to me.
"There is a girl,"
She whispered.
"a maid in the kitchens. She carries fire, and she does not know it."
Scarlet. My mother told me the truth of her power, that it would only awaken under intense grief. Betrayal. A pain deep enough to fracture the soul. After the ice sealed her away, I watched Scarlet. Every day. I couldn't bring myself to hurt her, not intentionally. But the children, innocent children, didn't deserve to remain frozen forever. And my mother, kind, gentle, beloved by all, didn't deserve that fate either. Only Aliera and I knew the price of breaking the curse. It was Aliera who proposed the solution.
She will survive it,
My sister had said carefully.
and the fire will come.
So the plan was formed. We had already observed Terran long before he ever rose in rank. Even as a grunt soldier, he was ambitious, power-hungry, careless with women, easily tempted. I promoted him. Aliera tempted him. And as expected, he took the bait. I instructed the headmaid to send Scarlet to the kitchens that night. Aliera knew exactly how to provoke him, how to draw cruelty from a man desperate to impress a princess. And Terran said everything I knew he would, cruel things, things that shattered her. The fire had come, more violently than I anticipated, but it had come. She was thrown in the dungeon, accused of things she did not maliciously do. I had saved her life that night. But saving her was never the same as absolving myself. The fire had answered exactly as my mother said it would, born from betrayal, fed by heartbreak. Scarlet hadn't chosen to burn the courtyard. She had broken, and the fire had followed. I told myself that mattered, that intent mattered. Yet when I remembered the look on her face in the dining hall, how easily she laughed when she wanted to hurt Terran, how quickly she melted into my touch, I felt something tighten in my chest that had nothing to do with strategy. This was the part I hadn't accounted for. The fire wasn't the only thing awakening. She was stronger now. Not in power, not yet, but in resolve, in defiance. And that made her dangerous in a way the council would never see coming.
Chapter 6. I barely remember closing the door. My body moved on instinct, muscles aching as I crossed the room and began preparing a bath, my thoughts circling the same questions over and over until they blurred together. Why had he saved me? Why had Terran fallen so quickly? And who had truly been watching? About time. I froze. The voice came from behind me, cool, composed. I was beginning to think you'd hide in the corridors all night. I turned slowly. Princess Aliera sat on the edge of my bed, one leg crossed over the other, watching me with a careful, assessing gaze. She looked perfectly at ease, as if she belonged there, as if I were the intruder. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her to leave, to scream at her, to demand answers. But she was a princess, and I had no strength left to fight anyone. "Sit, Scarlet," she said. There was no mockery in her voice, no venom, just quiet command. That alone unsettled me. Against my better judgment, I obeyed. The mattress dipped beneath my weight, the distance between us far too small. She studied me for a long moment before speaking again. "It was me," she said. "I lured the guards." My breath caught. "You... what?" The words came out hoarse. "I led the council's spies to you," she clarified calmly. "I made sure they heard everything." Shock rippled through me. Why? A dozen terrible reasons rushed through my mind at once. That she wanted me to confess. That she wanted proof of my guilt. That this was some elaborate punishment I hadn't yet earned. "Why?" I asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "So the council would know you're innocent." I stared at her. The words didn't make sense. Not from her. Not after everything. She seemed to read the confusion on my face because she sighed softly, reaching for a bottle of wine on the nearby table. "You're going to want this," she said. She poured a generous amount into a cup and held it out to me. I didn't take it. She rolled her eyes. "Relax. I'm not poisoning you." When I still didn't move, she lifted the cup and took a slow sip herself before offering it again. That was enough. I accepted it, my fingers trembling slightly as I drank. The warmth settled in my chest, loosening something I hadn't realized was locked tight. Aliera leaned back, folding her hands in her lap. "To understand why I helped you," she said quietly, "I need to tell you everything." My pulse quickened. "The truth," she continued, "about the fire, about my brother, about why you were standing in front of the council at all." The room felt suddenly smaller. She met my eyes. "And about what you are." The cup slipped slightly in my hand. Aliera drew a slow breath. "Years ago," she began, "during the Ice Wolf attack, the one everyone believes killed our mother and my brother, something else happened, something no one was meant to survive." My heart began to pound. "The Ice Wolf didn't just attack," she said. "He cursed us, with his dying breath." Her voice softened, but the words cut deeper. "He froze them, not dead, sleeping, trapped in ice that won't melt." I swallowed hard. "Only one thing can break that curse," she went on. "Fire strong enough to rival his ice." Her gaze sharpened. "Fire that isn't learned, or summoned, but born." The room tilted. "Our mother knew," Aliera said. "Before the ice claimed her completely, she told Adian there was a girl in the kitchens. A maid." My throat closed. "She said the girl carried fire," Aliera finished, "and that it would only awaken through betrayal so deep it shattered her." Silence swallowed the room. I felt cold. Then unbearably warm. "You," Aliera said softly. "That girl was you." The cup slipped from my fingers, wine splashing across the stone floor. I didn't notice. All I could hear was the roaring of blood in my ears. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. No, worse. I couldn't deny it. A simple torch and oil wick could not have caused that fire to spread so far. That fast. The way the flames had leapt, hungry, alive, had terrified me even as they obeyed something deep inside my chest. Then there were the memories. The day the Luna had found me in the kitchens while I was fanning the hearth. The way she had asked my name. The way she had returned again and again after that. speaking kindly to the maids, watching me with eyes far too perceptive. I should have known. No queen, kind or not, spent that much time in the kitchens without reason. And Taran? I whispered. Aliera's mouth tightened.
He was chosen, she said, because he was weak, because he wanted power, because men like him always take the bait when they think it's offered by royalty.
My stomach churned.
He wasn't meant to destroy you, she added quietly, only to break you enough for the fire to come.
My vision blurred.
But then the council got involved, she said, and then he lied.
Her gaze softened for the first time.
And then my brother stepped in.
Understanding settled slowly. So that was what Adian had meant when he said he was using me. I should have been furious. I wasn't. Their mother's life had been at stake. Innocent children trapped in ice, neither dead nor alive. I would have used me too, without hesitation, if it meant saving them. And Adian had been honest with me from the start. He hadn't pretended this was kindness. If anything, he had shown me exactly who Taran was. But there was one thing I still didn't understand. Why did the Ice Wolf want Adian's throne? I asked quietly. Why did he believe it should be his? And how did your mother recognize what I am? Aliera smiled sadly, as if she had been expecting that question, as if she had hoped I wouldn't ask it.
Because it was his, she said.
My breath caught.
The Ice Wolf, she continued softly, is my brother, Adian's brother, the one the world believes died that night.
The room seemed to tilt beneath me.
Our mother recognized your power,
Aliera said, meeting my gaze without flinching.
Because she had seen it before.
A chill ran through me.
In her own son.
Silence fell, and for the first time since the fire, I understood that I was standing at the center of something far older, far darker, and far more dangerous than betrayal. I wasn't just the spark. I was the answer. I was just about to tell Aliera that I would help them however I could, when the door opened. Adian stepped inside. His gaze swept the room in a single breathless second. His sister seated beside me, the spilled wine staining the stone floor. Then his eyes met mine. Alarm flashed across his face.
You told her everything,
he said quietly. He didn't wait for Aliera to answer. In 2 strides, he was in front of me, lowering himself until he was kneeling at my feet. His hands closed around mine, warm, steady, reverent.
I'm so sorry, Scarlet,
he said softly.
I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make this right.
My breath caught. I began. He shook his head, refusing to let me speak.
What I did was cruel,
he continued.
I know that, and I will accept your hatred if that is what you choose. But understand this. If there had been any other way, any other path that did not lead through your pain, I would have taken it.
His voice broke, not loudly, but honestly.
I would never have chosen this if I had another choice.
He started to say more. I didn't let him. I leaned forward and kissed him. Not softly, not carefully. It was deep and deliberate, my hands threading into his hair as if anchoring myself to something solid and real. I felt his sharp intake of breath, the moment of stunned stillness before he responded, slow, reverent, as if he were afraid this might vanish if he moved too fast. When I pulled back, his eyes were wide, searching. I rested my forehead against his. You showed me who Taran truly was, I said quietly. You never lied to me. You told me you were using me, even if you didn't tell me why. I pulled my hands free, only to cup his face. I understand, I continued. Your compassion for innocent children, for your mother, matters more than my pride, and I won't pretend otherwise. My voice didn't shake. So tell me, I said softly, how could I hate a man who would damn himself to save others? Adian closed his eyes, exhaling as if something inside him had finally broken loose. Behind us, Aliera stood. She didn't interrupt. She didn't smile. She simply watched, silent and thoughtful, as the fire she had helped awaken chose, for the first time, where it would stand. Epilogue. The palace gardens were quiet in the early morning light. Frost still lingered in the shaded corners of stone, but it no longer felt oppressive, no longer alive. The air was warmer now, carrying the faint scent of blooming herbs and fresh earth instead of cold iron and fear. Scarlet stood at the center of the garden, barefoot in the grass, her palms open. A small flame hovered above her skin. Not wild, not destructive. Steady. She smiled softly and let it fade.
You're getting better.
Adian said from behind her. She turned, laughter bright in her eyes. I'm not trying to burn down courtyards anymore. His mouth curved into a familiar smile, the one meant only for her. He crossed the distance between them easily, slipping his hands around her waist and resting his forehead against hers.
No,
He agreed.
you're learning how to live.
They stood like that for a moment, quiet and unguarded. The curse had been broken weeks ago. The ice had melted slowly, carefully, guided by Scarlet's fire, not grief-born this time, but willing, controlled, alive with hope instead of pain. The children had awakened first, confused but laughing, their breaths fogging the air as they clung to one another. And then, the Luna. Adian's mother had opened her eyes beneath thinning frost, her first breath warm and real. When she saw Scarlet standing there, hands glowing softly, face pale with exhaustion, she had smiled, just as she had in the kitchens years ago. Some things, Scarlet realized, had been watching her long before she ever noticed the flames. Life moved forward after that. The council dissolved quietly, its grip weakened by truth and consequence. Terran's name faded into history, spoken rarely, remembered only as a lesson. Aliera remained at court, sharper than ever, but honest now in a way she hadn't been before. And Scarlet. Scarlet was no longer a maid, nor a weapon, nor a secret. She was the Alpha's chosen partner, not because of prophecy or power, but because she had stood in fire and chosen compassion anyway. Adian brushed his thumb across her knuckles.
They're waiting for us.
Scarlet glanced toward the palace doors, where laughter drifted from within. Family, warmth, a future that didn't feel borrowed. She squeezed his hand. Let them wait. He laughed quietly and pulled her closer, pressing a kiss into her hair. For the first time in her life, the fire inside her felt like home, and for the first time, she knew. She wasn't meant to burn the world. She was meant to warm it,